And hello, good people of the internet. This is Tommy Kelly once again from adventuresinwoohoo.com, 40servants.com, and now TommyKelly.com. Well, there always was TommyKelly.com, but now it points to my Patreon page, my new fantastic Patreon page, where you can go and support me by giving me money, basically, every month, and in return you get some rewards, and I get to continue this work and upgrade and, just have a much better experience in my content generation. So if that's something that interests you, go to TommyKelly.com, TOMMIE Kelly.com, or just check out adventuresinwoohoo.com and you'll find all the things there. Okay, so lately I've been very busy behind the scenes and I haven't had a chance to get a podcast up, but I didn't want to leave too long with nothing new on the feed because, you might forget about me and stuff like that, which I would not like. So instead, what I decided to do is I'm going to upload this chat or this interview I did with Chapman for CMG AMA, which is Ask Me Anything, in July 2016. It's an interesting chat and kind of gives you a bit of insight on where Alan is at the moment. Unfortunately, Alan has since deleted his Facebook profile, which means that all of his answers to all the questions in the AMA are now completely gone. And but can you be that surprised? Alan has a habit, as we all know, of just deleting stuff he does. And so it is what it is. Also, this was meant to be a Google Hangout and a video thing, so the quality isn't great. It's two webcam cameras. And Google cut off the conversation at the end. It was a whole mess, really. So this is as best I could get the quality and as much of the interview or this chat as I could. Alan then wrote a small article about what we talked about in the last bit, so I will link to that in the show notes. I'll also link to his books in the show notes, which are great, and you should check them out. So on to this, and I will talk to you at the end. Enjoy. I'm here with Alan Chapman. Say hello, Alan Chapman.
Hello, Tommy.
First of all, thank you very much for doing this AMA for CMG. This is a brilliant opportunity for everyone to pick your brain, and hopefully we all learn something. So, well, you've been kind of quiet, I suppose, over the last couple of years. So, what have you been doing? What's been on in the world?
Well, that's quite a broad question.
Yeah, in 2 sentences or less, please.
Okay, so basically, I moved to Wales and had a family.
Right, okay. So, I suppose most people in this group probably know you as the guy who wrote Advanced Magic for Beginners.
Right.
When you look at that book now, is it a representation of who you are, or is it more like that's 2 months out of diary kind of a thing of my life, or what way do you think of that book?
I do find it surprising that people still read that book or find it useful or whatever, because I wrote that when I was 26.
Sure.
I think you can tell. In terms of what I present in there, roughly it's the same thing. Like, I know it might seem like I wrote that book, I did the Baptist Head stuff, did some magical stuff, and then for those people that followed the story, went to the whole awakening thing and then disappeared, became a hermit in Wales or whatever. But the truth is I've just carried on with the same stuff.
Right. Just not publicly. Well, internet publicly, I'm sure.
Yeah, the reason I kind of disappeared, if we can call it that, is because moving from the magical stuff, so doing the magic stuff, a particular result happens that I would call the great work. And then for the last 6 years, I've either been guiding people through that process or spending my time trying to work out what it is or what it means, or making sense of this stuff. And so a number of times I've started new projects on the internet as a way of doing that. So after the Baptist Head, I did Open Enlightenment, where I thought perhaps we could have a public conversation an adult conversation.
Yeah, you said it's, I've seen on your site, you said that it's based on a false premise, basically, Open Enlightenment. That's why you pilot, yeah.
Yeah. The false premise was that it's possible to have an open adult conversation.
Well, you should have known that, really.
I was being too. Well, this is one of the stink of enlightenment is that everyone's wonderful and this is fantastic. Let's. let's explore it. Basically, the conversation was shut down repeatedly, or people tried to do that in a very ironic way.
You can't be enlightened and talk about it. Is that the general, or you can't?
Yeah, so you can't. There are a number of beliefs about it. It's first of all, you can't know what it is until you've experienced it. When you do experience it, there's no one there to experience it, and it's not even an experience. And you can't make sense of it anyway once you do get there.
Right.
So, in other words, the whole thing is evidence of a nonsensical reality, like nothing makes sense.
Right.
Now, the people who shut it down, interestingly, were people from the Zen community and people from what I call the pseudo-Advaita crowd. They're pseudo-Zenists as well, really, because they don't really represent the traditions. But it was those people that came, really, and sabotaged the conversation.
The Zen thing is kind of don't talk about it, isn't it? Like there's no goal, there's no anything. You just sit there looking at the wall. That's what you do. That's kind of it. And any talk other than that is kind of seen as a no-go area sort of thing, is it? Or no, that's my experience of say what Zen people are like. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it stems from a massive misunderstanding of Dogen. So,
right.
The founder of Soto Zen.
Sure. Yeah.
He had a big question, and his big question was, and stop me if I'm going off on a tangent. If you want to
tangents are great. I love tangents.
Dogen, he's the guy who founded Soto Zen, and he had a big question at the time. There was a prevalent
Shobogenzo guy, isn't it? The guy who wrote that.
Yes, Shobogenzo, yeah. So there's a big question at the time that he had, which was there's this big crowd of it was a variety of Mahayana Buddhists that went around saying you're already awake, or rather you already have this Buddha nature, so you don't need to do anything. Like, don't bother trying to wake up. Don't even bother following the precepts or whatever, because basically it's all right somewhere in some nebulous dimension or whatever. It's already
kind of like you have it, but you've forgotten. It's an illusion. That sort of stuff.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So there was that argument that you already have this Buddha nature from Mahayana Buddhism, but then of course you have the original teaching of the Buddha, which is you to sit and wake up.
Yeah.
And that's the point of it. So his big question was, how do you reconcile those two? In an astonishing way, like the literature he created is just incredible. There's nothing else like it. Certainly in Zen, I mean, mostly in the wisdom traditions.
It's quite late too, isn't it? It's like 1400s or something, isn't it? Or is it maybe earlier? Like it's
13th century.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Which is late in Zen terms, I suppose, not really.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. His answer was, I mean, the problem with Dogen is in Chinese, it's extraordinary. He does lots of plays on words. He references a lot of cultural stuff at the time, so if you're reading at the time, you'd understand it. It makes a lot more sense than what it does now, being translated by inexperienced and arguably unqualified translators.
Do you know Brad Warner? Yeah, are you aware of him as an author? He's recently done a translation of it.
Who, sorry?
Brad Warner. He's still like the punk guy. He used to be the bass player in or whatever. Not NoFX, the other one, something.
Yeah, no, if you want to understand Dogen, you should read, there's only one book I'd recommend. That's Ehi Dogen, Mystical Realist by a man called Kim. It was written in 1975.
Okay.
So some of the great things about Dogen, you won't get from a translation. You need someone to explain what the play on words is. That kind of is lost in the translation. He manages to explain Dogen using concepts that go around the necessity of translating his work so that it looks like he's talking in contradictions.
Right.
So rather than fixating on, say, how he presents a four-stage, we can call it a dialectic of sorts, with some of his teaching, which is what Brad Warner's teacher focused on, and he thought that was the key to Dogen.
Yeah.
Or rather than focusing on a really strange interpretation of Zen as a proto-Alexander technique.
Right, okay, yeah.
Cross and those people who translate the Shobogenzo, what they thought it was about. He focused on a number of ideas: actualization and an obstruction. And actualization means that the sitting practice isn't a means to an end to wake up. Rather, it's a way of, I'll put it to my own language, just to make it clearer, it's a way of actualizing enlightenment or participating in it.
So the actual Zazen meditation is a part of the enlightenment thing itself.
Yeah, so he if you see any translation of Dogen, he always talks about practice enlightenment or practice awakening. And he says that's what Zazen is. But the way of thinking about that is you do the sitting practice to participate in a nature that's already the case, such that you achieve awakening, such that you wake up. So he does talk about awakening.
Jumping ahead a bit, that's basically what your esoteric contemplation thing is similar to, isn't it?
Yeah, it's also arguably what magic is.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Dogen, right? People, we do this Western thing. Like, you look at Zen and you think, oh, look, it's just people doing a sitting practice and whatever. What tends to happen with Eastern traditions is as soon as they're imported over to the West, they get sanitized. So
Right.
rip out everything else that's in there. So there was what we would call magical rituals. There's loads of that stuff in Soto Zen originally.
Right.
You find the pentagram in like Shingon Buddhism, esoteric Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism. An example, Theravada Buddhism. If you go and study that, say, in the Thai forest tradition, they had like 36 different kinds of meditation. They had chakras. They had all these different kinds of rituals, divination, all these things. If you look at it in the West, it's one practice, noting practice.
Yes. Yeah.
That's it, sanitized completely. So that statement about it actually being magic. So do you want to unpack that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. It might make more sense if I talk about what I did and how I ended up where I'm at now and why I see it as the same thing.
Also, let's go back to the first question.
Yeah. So, okay. So in my 20s, I was doing what people would call chaos magic, I suppose. You know, magical rituals, statements of intent, going after specific things or whatever, enjoying results from that kind of thing. And someone suggested, at this point, I was part of a group, and the person that was my mentor said, at this point, why don't you do the Holy Guardian Angel work? So prior to doing the chaos magic stuff, the practical stuff, I was really into Crowley. That was my introduction to what I call wisdom practice or magic.
Okay.
But I couldn't find all the organizations based around his stuff weren't doing it for me. I was more interested in doing the actual, doing magic and seeing what happens.
Yeah.
So what now the chaos magic route is to do. So I did the Holy Guardian Angels working. And that's when, for me anyway, the narcissistic belief is relative and that's all there is viewpoint of thing, that bubble popped.
Okay.
Because essentially I did the HJ working, and then first of all stuff started to happen that I had no control over, which meant I wasn't top of the pecking order anymore. But second of all, and this is really important, this is the most important aspect of this, I began to get particular magical results that gave me what it was that I was looking for in any area of life that I wasn't equipped to articulate as a statement of intent.
Okay.
So for instance, in terms of your love life or having a partner or whatever, you could do a magical ritual and you could think, what's your type? Well, I'm into 5-foot black women,
Right.
blah, 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 blah. Must be a Wiccan or whatever, because, we're into that, blah, blah, blah. Tattoos, that's my thing, right? You could do that, but you're ruling out the possibility that there's a fulfillment in that area doesn't come from the preferences or opinions that you've accumulated in your life. So,
Kind of, are you saying that there's a possibility that you don't know what you actually want? Is that what
that's a great way of putting it. So the two things: one, I'm not the center of the universe, and two, I have no fucking clue what's good for me.
Right. Yeah.
No idea. So those two things happen with the Holy Guardian Angel stuff. So I began to find that rather than a discontinuity in terms of practical magical results, rather than a discontinuity in that, it was the amplification of it. I just had more of it. So housing, the job that I had, the person I was with, the stuff that I was doing with my life, people that I knew, the results were much richer, much more perfectly fulfilling in every way I could think about that. And then there's a growth in that from doing that practice.
And was that kind of like a letting go in yourself, or was it just that's the way it started to unfold? Like, when you say new jobs or new relationships, were you still looking for relationships, or is it that old thing of once you stop looking, the thing arrives? Or how practically does that? You
don't have to bother about any of that stuff. So it doesn't even come into it. So it's like, so you start doing that stuff, and then all of a sudden, you just fall into the perfect job.
Right.
Just doing it and enjoying it. Same with relationships, same with whatever. Now, and it's important to note this. I'm not saying, there's one particular thing that will fulfill everyone in terms of the particulars of their lives. I'm actually saying that the scope of that is so diverse, it's beyond what people are capable of articulating.
Sure. Yeah.
Everything I've just described, by the way, is the key to understanding Crowley.
Okay.
Well, the true will it's what, and we'll get onto esoteric contemplation in a minute.
Cool.
It's what do what thou wilt means.
There's a lot of debate on what it means.
Exactly. But it's a distraction.
Sure.
It's very obvious that the linchpin of Crowley's approach was doing the Holy Guide and Angel work every day, and thereby manifesting your true will in the world. So Crowley did talk about, like, you could make a big list of all your tributes and your history and whatever, and work out what it is. But actually, you don't need to do that. You just don't need to do it. You can just do this one thing every day, this ritual every day. Where, I mean, essentially the whole
ritual, like, is this the one that you talked about? That's kind of like the centering prayer one, that HGA working, or is it a different ritual you're talking about?
Yeah, but we can give a like a universal description of this kind of practice, which is like, it's a ritual, as in you do it all the time.
Yeah.
Every day. The HJ working is essentially a way of bringing your attention to bear on a way of understanding things, or in other words, like the hierarchy of reality. Like, in other words, like, you think about something larger than yourself.
Is it like when people say the HGA is your completest magic self, your future self? Do you buy into that, or what do you think the HGA is? That's probably should have started with that. Like, what is the HGA?
Well, this is one of the, again, we might have to return to some of the stuff I was saying just to finish off. But, so, by the way, the reason I did the HJ thing in the first place, and this is how it was presented to me, it wasn't do the great work and blah, 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 blah. It was invoke your future magical self. And I was, well, I'm getting sweet results now. Imagine what it'd be like if I invoke my future self 50 years in the future. Imagine the magical results that will come from that.
Yeah.
So I did that, but I went through, it was something like 7 revisions of what the HJ was or what it looked like. And I mean that in terms of, like, visionary magical experience.
Okay.
Like, so I started off doing practice. Revealed itself to me to a certain extent. And then that was revised or destroyed, and another one was created that was much bigger in view and in scope. And it kept changing.
Okay. But it's getting bigger in scope.
Yeah. And there's this argument, so, like, this idea of being a future magic self. It was like that for a bit, and then it's like, it's way bigger than that.
Okay, yeah. That's limiting.
Then it's like
that title on it, it's limiting it, I suppose.
Yeah, and then it's like, it's a real angel. It's bigger than that.
Right.
Oh, actually, you know what? It's just another way of thinking about God, in a way that Crowley called it Adonai, the Lord.
Right.
Actually, no, it's bigger than that. Now, people might say that's the point, that you're supposed to keep doing that. That's not the point. That shows that your understanding, or the symbols that you're using, or the analogy that you're using is imperfect.
Okay.
So there's a way of understanding the structure of things where you don't need to keep revising the contemplation, if you like, or the ritual that you're doing, or the image that you're using. And that would always be the case, because it's describing a universal structure of things. Now, I know that's going to be controversial, just saying that there's a universal structure to things.
Sure.
But this is the challenge of doing this kind of practice. Are you willing to be wrong about everything?
Yeah, this is it.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
To be wrong about everything. And so many people, and it's an irony that many people who, they champion belief over anything else, and, like, using it as a tool and so on, they're the ones most unwilling to go beyond that belief.
Yes, totally. Yeah, I agree. Or any belief. Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, bringing it back around to what we talked about before, in terms of the HJ work, I haven't stopped doing that. Except what's changed is that, and this took a long time. What's changed is the cultivation of what I'll call esoteric contemplation,
okay.
But the use of perfect analogies for relating to the nature of things, such that you can enjoy those particular and fulfilling magical results.
Okay.
Doing it. So, true will. I just wanted to mention this because it's worth giving. I hope people appreciate this. I'm sure many people do. But so much stuff is said about Crowley, and so much stuff is said about Thelema, and, like, I've seen people arguing over. They come up with these scenarios and then argue about what true will would mean in these scenarios. Like, I was driving into Lidl, whatever, and, like, someone took up my parking space. They got there before me. So, like, whose true will was it to get in that? Blah, 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 blah. And they're either doing that or they're doing just preposterous associations between Kabbalistic sums.
Sure. Yeah.
But this is the genius, I think, of Crowley, was that he talks about true will, and you don't find that in any other tradition, anywhere, articulated in any meaningful way. I know some people say that they find it in Tantra or whatever. I could make a strong case that's not the case, that what they're talking about is something completely different. This notion that this process that we talk about, I use the word wisdom. You could swap that out for the word magic if you want.
Okay.
an archaic sense, and we'll get to that as well if you want. So yes, this process that you go through, you realize what's universally, personally meaningful, what's universal for everyone, that everyone finds personally meaningful, and you might talk about that as awakening, or process of waking up, or whatever. But simultaneously, and this is true regardless of what you do, like what tradition you belong to, whether it's recognized or not. But if it's not recognized, it means it's impoverished to a certain extent.
Okay.
The results are sabotaged as a result. But going through that process, you get what's particularly personally meaningful as well. So, and that's what magic is about.
Personal meaningfulness.
Yeah, but I mean, because the universal is personally meaningful.
Yeah.
But it's those particulars, like the unique life circumstances that you could enjoy through magic. And what's incredible about it as well is that it's ideal in the sense that you get what you want more than anything else without even having to know what that is.
Okay.
All you have to do is say yes.
So this HGA work that you're on about now, that you did and all that, is that previous or post to the actual awakening experience you had when you went to India and stuff at that time? Or is that still, are you talking about it as that's an ongoing, I'm doing that today? Or
what I do today is esoteric contemplation. There's one particular kind that is recognizable, if you like, as HGA working, and that's the lover and beloved analogy.
Okay.
It's a traditional analogy, and it's a way of understanding the relationship of what we can call the psyche. Traditionally, it would be called a soul.
Okay.
But a relationship between the psyche and reality. And you can understand the psyche as a lover and reality as a beloved.
Okay.
Between the two.
Is this similar to microcosm, macrocosm? Is it that, or is it different?
There is certainly the reality is certainly the greater, and the psyche is the lesser in that relationship. I mean, the virtue of these analogies is that it helps you to make sense of how we might technically describe this. So the relationship between the psyche and reality is that please bear with me, it's a generative hierarchy of equal participation.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which means there's a lesser and there's a greater, and you get to share in the greater, and the greater gets to share in you.
This is the thing you're on about the parent and the child thing in the emails, is it?
Yes, yeah. Same with the lover and beloved, same with maker and maid. These are traditional analogies, which explains, it used to be father and son. That was the traditional.
Yeah, can't do that now, though.
Parent and child, which explains a lot about where Christianity got it from.
Sure.
There's an argument that it was a big Hellenic culture at the time. They understood it as an analogy. Jesus, philosopher, that's why he used that analogy, and then it was taken to mean something else. Like recognizing that it's an analogy means that it's always pointing to something that's greater than the analogy itself. The virtue is understanding what the relationship is, and therefore how you can relate to what's greater than yourself. So the greater shares in the lesser shares in the greater. Growth happens as a result, but each remains as they are. So it's the only thing that explains why you can go through this process of waking up and yet remain an individual.
Okay.
All the details remain, nothing's lost. You don't end up with this, homogeneous oneness where everything's just sort of mashed together and there aren't any details.
So this idea of like ascended masters or perfected humans, do you just dismiss that at this point? Or
the doctrine of the perfect man, perfect human being, this means something very specific. Perfect or perfection or completeness. This was an old idea for meaning something that had reached full growth. It doesn't quite have the same connotations as what we use that word to mean now in terms of being perfect. So there was this recognition that if you participate in something that's already complete, it's possible then, by sharing in that nature, for you to reach that completion and participate in it. Okay. So the completion remains complete.
Right, yeah.
Always the case, if you like. This is coming back to Dogen, by the way.
Okay.
And I would argue a better way of articulating it than talking about actualizing awakening. And we didn't really talk about unobstruction, but unobstruction is another way of understanding them sharing in each other.
Okay.
There's no barrier to that sharing. Okay, so what was I talking about? We're talking about the perfect man.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, the doctrine of the perfect human being. This goes back to Egypt. So you can trace it all the way back to the Western tradition, all the way to Egypt. This is the recognition that you need two parts to understand the whole awakening thing. There's the waking up to what's already the case, the greater. But that's the lesser sharing in the greater. And that's well recognized. It's often expressed as a removing of veils.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. It's a movement towards an emptiness, or I prefer the term not anything, because that emptiness is a technical Buddhist term that everyone thinks means nothing, when that's not what it means.
Okay.
We can say not anything, and that includes not nothing.
All right.
Yeah, so you can see it as a movement of purity or purification, removing of veils to see what the truth is, the thing that's always already the case. and that's the sharing in the greater. But the greater shares in the lesser, and literally that means the bringing of that greater into the world.
Okay.
So you have traditions. So it's reminiscent of Gurdjieff talking about human beings are born, they don't have a soul, they have to crystallize one or develop one through work. That's bringing the soul into the world. Well, the process continues beyond the soul to something else, something greater, and you're bringing that literally into the world.
What does that practically look like, though? Like, like, I mean, it sounds good in theory, but when it's coming in, what is that? How does that display in?
Well, so you can see that in the transformation of the human being who's going through the process.
Okay.
It has an effect going through this process. You realize what's already the case, but the human being is transformed as a result. So you could say you've got what's always already the case, which is a nice phrase from Adida, always already the case, but then you have never the same again. Well, there's a transformation that you go through, and you have to have both of those to understand what's going on. Okay, I'll go with the most controversial and yet the most amazing illustration of what I'm talking about. By literally bringing the greater here, it means that as a human being, through human relationship, you can facilitate someone participating in that just through sheer contact, whether that's by sound or proximity or whatever. So traditionally, that's called transmission.
Okay, so this is the idea of that if you're beside someone enlightened, it rubs off on you, kind of thing.
Well, you could put it that way.
Yeah.
Now, of course, this whole idea has been, very much abused. It's very much misunderstood. Human beings, if they're not willing to go beyond what they understand or what they believe, tend to think it's them that's doing it.
Okay.
Especially through this process. Going through this process, by the way, doesn't mean the person understands what they've been through.
Okay.
And often, and this is often the case, because of the structure of the process that you go through, you're always presented with an image that's totally false about what comes next. And often people indulge that. So if you think you've had an awakening and you think, oh, I've reached the end of the road, what you often see coming next is nothingness, is a nothingness. But nothing is actually the opposite of what we might call something that's not anything. It's not anything less, not anything else, not anything more than the reality of appearance. I can appreciate that that's probably a technical language. People probably think I'm talking gobbledygook, but
I think I understand it. But again, I kind of work better with, like I said, when I try to bring things, what's that look like in the real world? And I appreciate that you can't do that with this stuff.
Just go on YouTube and look at any of these. It's disparaging, but it's time to disparage certain things. I think that the glassy-eyed soft talkers, the people who they have a little YouTube video and they're all glassy-eyed and they talk like this. There's no one to wake up, and people in India can suffer because they have less of a sense of self. So you hear people say shit like that.
Yeah.
If you think that if you think you realise that all of this is an illusion and is of no consequence, you can expect every human relationship that you have to disintegrate as a result.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Sabotage everything that you do. This is why we need a way of knowing what we've experienced. A way of knowing that's contrary to what we think we're seeing. We always need that thing. Coming back to that again, are you willing to be wrong about everything?
Yeah.
Are you willing to be wrong about everything? And this is specifically what this process is. You know the truth because you get to see what's totally wrong. And that's the only way.
All right. Okay. That makes sense to me.
And that's what a growth is. You have to grow through an error that's been made, see what the truth is. You'll never make that error again. And that's what growth is in terms of...
Because you've seen it for what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and mistake again because you know what it is.
Yeah, just to be in existence, the universal level, you've got false beliefs about everything. You think existence is the only context for existence. There's something bigger than existence.
Oh right, yeah.
It's just the beginning.
Yeah,
it's just the beginning. Personally, as a human being, you have drawn conclusions that are false, especially when you're young, that are transmitted to the family, that have similar consequences for you, like they sabotage you. Engaging in what's particularly personally meaningful. And that's what dialectic contemplation looks at and resolves. And that's a way of knowing. So you can use dialectic to look at problems that you have, to understand them and resolve them. So
probably at this stage just should explain briefly what the dialectic contemplation is.
Okay. So dialectic contemplation, where to begin with that? So the first person to use the word dialectic was Plato, but he pretty much, he was a bit like the chaos magician of his time. He went around getting all the awesome stuff and then practicing that stuff. Some of the stuff he saw but didn't really understand, and we know he didn't understand it.
Yeah.
But then he did this amazing thing. He wrote all these different dialogues, which were extraordinary analogies, and he presented this idea of participation and he talked about dialectic, but he inherited all that stuff. Okay. And he presented a lot of people that came before him, such as, say, Parmenides, who was an archaic magician, presented him in such a way that he would seem like he's the heir to that guy, and his philosophy is the best, and blah blah blah. So he was very politically driven in terms of what he did. But dialectic basically means, and by the way, it's got nothing to do with Hegel or Marx or any of those people. If we would talk about awakening, and then we talked about how you see an image that's the opposite to what comes next. Similarly, that kind of dialectic is the opposite to what I'm talking about.
All right, okay.
The opposite to it. So I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. So dialectic, if you looked at it, you just say it's a series of questions. It's using questions to bring your attention back to something so that you will just describe what's there instead of going off into interpretation or opinion or fantasy land.
Okay.
And that fantasy land is due to a conclusion, a non-verbal conclusion that you drew in the past. Okay. So, this was clearly articulated, by the way, a long time ago by many people. You can go beyond beliefs into understanding, something beyond belief into understanding, and then beyond that to what we can call wisdom or knowledge. Like, there isn't just the realm of belief. But we're stuck there, aren't we? Because people keep saying, like, all opinions are of equal value. We should respect their opinion.
But that's going down to old Ken Wilber stages and all that too, isn't it? Of like, that's just what we are.
The thing about Ken Wilber is all he articulates is the evolution of beliefs.
Sure, yeah. You're so it's above that again.
The interesting thing that happens if you describe using dialectic, what we can call cosmology, what's traditionally understood to be a cosmology, which is the structure of reality based on going through this process, and having a way of countering your beliefs and your opinions and so on. You find that there is no room for this evolution of consciousness that he talks about. It doesn't feature, it's not in there.
Right.
It's not in there. Anyway, so that's what I think of Ken Wilber. Right, so let's see if we can tie up some loose strings. So dialectic, it's a way of contemplating, so you can stay with something to describe it long enough to see the whole of it. When you see the whole of it, you see it for what it is. And so you can do that with dreams, with daydreams, with distractions, with dramas or repetitive problems that you have in your life. You can do it with these...
It's like basically with anything, like if people have like limiting beliefs that not limiting, say, I can't talk in front of people, is it like even to that level, is it?
Yeah, anything. Anything. You can do it with anything, yeah. And that's all it is. I have to accept that there has to be a misunderstanding of dialectic and dialectic contemplation at this point, because most people haven't seen it. And when you see it, it's extraordinary.
Okay.
There's a certain willingness to be misunderstood about presenting it. And certainly because the word, like I said before, the word dialectic has been hijacked by Western academic pseudo-philosophy, which is... So, dialectic says you can understand anything. You can come to know the truth of anything. It's present. All you have to do is participate in it. Okay. So in other words, stay with it and see what it is, and you will grow in understanding until it reaches completion, and you see what the thing is.
And that, in relation to personal problems, is the idea of the dialectic contemplation.
Yeah. And you can do it with anything. So choice. There's a choice. You have to choose to want to participate in that. No, nothing else will do it. If you don't do it, it's not going to happen on its own.
Right. So, unless you're going to work on these things, they're always going to be a problem. Is that what you're saying? Or
because there's a prevalent spiritual idea, and in fact, you find it across the board everywhere. There's a thing called progress, and it just happens by itself.
Sure, which is what we think humanity does start.
Yeah. Essentially, this is Hegelian dialectic.
Right.
And the unfortunate thing about Hegelian dialectic is that it informed all of the worst political philosophies of the 20th century: communism, fascism, Nazism, the whole thing. And it's this notion of recognizing that there's an opposite, but you overcome it with sheer force, with strength.
Right.
You overcome it with strength, with force. So that's what we need to do. We need to look at the brutal facts, and we need to overcome them together. Let's burn all the Jews. So that's unfortunate, but that's not what the nature of dialectic is. So
I think it starts where it can be daydream, a dream, drama, and what's the fourth one? Can't think.
Did you mention distraction?
Distraction is the other one. And then from what I can gather is you're breaking it down into scenes and you make an image of it. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's basically to objectify it. Basically to give it one sort of, so you're not, as you were saying, you're not going off thinking about...
As we're magicians, we can say what you're constructing is, you think of it as like a talisman.
Right, okay.
So if something happens, if you draw the details, and then the questions of the dialectic are getting you just to fill in the details. And once you've filled in the details, so you see the whole of it, that's when you see what it really is. And it's the opposite to what you think it is. So
always the opposite, or is it?
Striking, yeah. It's a striking thing that that's the nature of things. You see that in many, many traditions. They talk about consciousness or awareness or the mind is a mirror.
Sure, yeah.
Well, what's a mirror other than something that displays a reflection or an opposite image?
Yeah.
The other classical analogy, by the way, is shadow.
Sure.
You can think of it as building up a talisman, if you like, and at the end, what you do is you give it a name, the thing that you're looking at. You give it a name and you name it.
So you have power over it. You
have power over it, so you've named something. Yeah. Now, if you think of it as a detrimental problem that's been dogging you for your entire life, sabotages you whenever you try and engage in something personally meaningful, which is what it always does, passed down through the generations. It's why families are the way that they are. It's why there's always often there can be an oppressive emotional milieu to the family.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it behaves. These beliefs behave in what you can describe as in a parasitic fashion. It's transmitted like an anti-spirituality or an anti-wisdom,
like a meme of sorts, kind of.
I wouldn't use the word meme,
right? Because but like the idea, it's something similar to the idea that a meme represents.
Well, it's a parasite.
Yeah. Well, okay. What I mean is, it's going through people rather. It's not inherited physically. It's by what people say to their kids, kind of thing. Or do you think there's more to it than that?
Well, it'd be like the mental equivalent of genes.
Right.
Yeah. And now I know that memes have been used as an equivalent. I know that, but that's an extraordinarily bad metaphor.
Right. Okay.
But we won't go into that now. It's like anyway.
Especially not with a video that's going on the internet. You can't give out about memes on the internet. They just.
Well, you see, people use meme now to mean something else, just like the idea that's spread around, that's fine. But, so you build up it's like building up a talisman. It's like naming it. Is it time to talk about the Archaic Magician?
Yeah, I think so. Go for it.
So, I mean, I apologize if this is sort of rambling all over.
Yeah, but what's good about this is that it can be broke down further in the actual AMA that is to follow. So.
Okay. Yeah. So, in terms of the Archaic Magician, if we go back in time, if we go back to Egypt and even before that, you find that there are only two magical acts.
Sure.
Yeah. So there's.
I say sure, and the only way I know that is because you told me this the other day.
Right. Yes. Binding and release. Yeah. Release from a binding, and that was it. There weren't any other magical acts. Now, of course, there's lots of different ways of doing those magical acts, but those are the two things: you're either binding or you're releasing.
So, say curing illness was releasing. That all healing was.
Yes. Releasing. Yeah. So basically, if you find you've got some kind of a problem, you go and see a magician and say, "Oh, I've got this problem," and he'll recognize that you're bound in some way. Sometimes, I mean, magician porn is that some other evil sorcerer has cursed someone,
right?
And now you're going to release that binding that's been put on, blah blah blah. But essentially, you've got a problem. You go and see a magician, and they release you from that binding. Now, the way you do that is, if you want to release someone from a binding, is that you bind them to it more.
Okay.
So this is essentially what dialectic contemplation is. You have a problem, you look at the problem. It needs this of a dream, by the way, just to revisit what I mentioned before. We have dreams, don't we? We wake up. They always seem nonsensical, confusing, a bit wacky, blah, blah, blah. So you end up with these silly explanations that it's like, it's the brain processing, blah, 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 whatever. Anyway, you can say that's a problem in understanding. You don't know what it is that's just happened. Right. So, and you could have more obvious problems, like you're an alcoholic.
Okay.
Or, whatever. So you get that problem, and what you want to do is bind yourself to it more to gain release from it. So you do that by not trying to get away from it, not trying to get rid of it, but instead describe it. Go into it into more detail. Make a whole image of it. Recapitulate the whole thing. And that's why we do. That's why we have an image, by the way. It's just so we have something we can look at and see and make sense of a concept. To play as a whole, so we can see the whole thing.
Dangerous in any sense doing that in certain times or certain people, like say someone with PTSD or something that's really heavy.
I've done it with people.
Okay.
You have to. The person you're doing it with has to be willing to revisit it.
Yeah.
But this is the closer you get to resolving the problem, the more the problem itself tries to sabotage it.
Right. It'll try to tell you something else, this thing that or sabotage, and that you not want to do it. What kind of forms does the sabotage take?
Technically, you play the role that you're trying to get rid of. But another way of thinking about it is that you'll get so far before you finish and say, "Oh, that's the end. We don't have to go any further." You'll start to experience strong emotions, and it's like, "That's enough. I'm just feeling that now. That's probably the end."
Is it like squeezing the spot but not getting the last bit out? Is it like, and then the spot just goes back?
Well, such that the pain, that you decide not to go any further.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'll give you that. You can use that in your literature.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so
is it like, say, like taking an example of someone who's like, say, jealous with his girlfriend or whatever it is,
yeah.
And you say go further into it. Is that to become more jealous, or what? Like, what does, in the case of say an emotion like that, it's jealousy, an emotion, I don't know, whatever it is. Is that just literally writing down or looking down at all the ways that manifests in your life? So,
if you think let's say last night you had an argument with a girlfriend where you got jealous about something.
Right.
And you're aware that how you're behaving is inappropriate to the situation, like it's overblown or like it's stupid. Of course, she's not cheating on you, but you can't help being paranoid that she is. Like, you're aware of that. You have to be, again, so this is the sense that you're full of shit.
Right.
But you don't understand where the problem's coming from.
But you just know you are. Like, you know that the problem's you.
Yeah, but you know you've got a problem. Yeah. So you have to be willing to go beyond what you think you know. Again, so that has to be there. So you take that instance, that scene, and just describe it. That's all you have to do. Now, you often find that there are other scenes in the past where you behave that way, and you can sort of revisit those until you get to the origin scene, which is when you drew a non-verbal conclusion, and it's the reason why you play it.
And if you don't get to the first one, if you can't remember the first time, or will you always remember the first time? Well, like,
something interesting. There's no such thing as amnesia.
Okay, right, okay.
So do a dialectic on amnesia. It's interesting. Well, spoiler alert, when you're dealing with amnesia, you're attempting to get rid of an absence. How successful are you going to be?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
interesting anyway.
Like you're saying, getting rid of an absence. Is that not really just kind of wordplay in a sense, though? Or is it, or explain, like...
It's really important. If you think that the way you get something that you want is by dealing with the absence of it, you're literally not dealing with the thing itself.
Right. I have that. Yeah.
Everything. It costs you everything.
Yeah.
Essentially what it means. So,
which is why it's come back saying it's always the opposite of what you think.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, because it sounds dumb to put it this way. Failure is failure. Success is success.
Yeah. No.
So back.
This jealous guy, you had the drama last night. He's wrote it and it's in front of him. What's next?
Okay, so you look at the scene. You look at what happened. Like I said, you can trace it back to an origin scene.
Does it have to be drawn, or can it be written down?
No, this is the problem. You try and write it down, you end up with a body of text. You cannot quickly, like if you look at a picture that you've drawn, and again, it can be a bad drawing, a really bad drawing, like stick figures, a few key phrases, the emotional states that you were in and how intense they were. You can look at that and see the whole thing in a second. If you have a body of text, by the time you've got down to the end of a paragraph, you've forgotten what's at the beginning.
Sure, yeah.
And that's why you draw it out. So the person would do that, they trace it back to an origin scene. When they see the false conclusion that they've drawn, because you can only articulate when you look at the scene, when you do the conclusion, the non-verbal conclusion, you always draw a conclusion that costs you something ideal. It costs you something ideal. So maybe the conclusion you've drawn is about what it means to be cared for.
Okay.
Like where we're at now at the moment, the problem is often people expect generalizations, and you see this in any kind of psychology. People look at generalizations, like what's across the board. I mean, generalization literally means not right in every instance because it's general.
Right, okay, yeah. But it's taken the other way.
Yeah, well, generalization is useless. It's useless. You either want something that's universal, always true, all times and every way, or particular.
Right.
The situation. And always, when it comes to conclusions, they're always particular. People don't have general problems; they have particular ones.
Yes, yeah.
Until you see what that particular problem is, you won't be free of it. So it's why you can go and have psychotherapy and gain a little bit of space around certain problems. Maybe do some magical stuff, gain some space around it, but you never get rid of it. You have to return to the source. Now, I was talking about the Archaic Magician. And I was talking about binding, and if you have a problem, you bind yourself to it more.
Yeah.
Now, the other side of that is if you have a release from something that you care about, that you want, you're free from something that you want, the way you get the thing that you want, and I mentioned this to you once, and I think you said, well, you need to practice release from the release.
Right.
And I think I said no, but I was wrong. That's exactly what you do.
Right. So I was right.
Yes, you were right, yeah. But I wanted to describe the fact that you're binding yourself. So, for instance, if you want to bind yourself to a deeper realization of the nature of reality, say,
Right.
which is, why not?
Yeah.
Say you want to do that, but you appear to have an absence of it, or you appear to be free from it. The way that you bind yourself to it is not to chase after it or to lust after it.
Okay.
Instead, what you do is you practice freedom from that freedom, or that release, or that absence, if you like.
Right.
I hope that makes sense. In other words, it's like being free from lust of result.
Yes. Yeah.
So dialectic contemplation is binding yourself to a problem so you can gain release from it. Esoteric contemplation, that's you binding yourself to what you find universally, particularly personally meaningful.
Just for people listening to esoteric contemplation, this is the meditative type practice that you're right.
Yeah, the daily practice, which I was saying, the originator for me of that was the HJ. Working. You're binding yourself to what's universally and personally meaningful, particularly meaningful. You do that by not having lust of result for it, or by being free from this apparent absence that isn't there.
So in that thing, the esoteric contemplation, I've been doing it the last couple of days, just to change my meditation thing. And it does seem similar to me to, as I said this earlier, the centering prayer, keep Thomas Keating, Father Keating, his thing. But more your kind of twist on it that you did with the HDA thing. But when it gets to the thing where it's just burn, which is the last part of this kind of, not mantra, whatever your statement of intent or whatever.
Being magicians, we can say incantation.
Incantation, right. Is that just the same as surrender, let it go, just be all that? What exactly is...
So any idea of being active in the sense of, okay, I'm going to do something that's going to get me a result in the end.
Right.
That's to deny that it's to deny participation, to deny what the actual nature of things is.
Okay.
Again, we can come back to this thing that people are familiar with. If you're lusting after a result, you won't get it.
So it's awakening is a fire.
Yes.
Right, and then you have the two bits that I'm going to get wrong. Is it when the appearance of reality is the reality of appearance? Is that right? Just burn. That's the incantation. Am I right? Or did I confuse it?
It's kind of there. So it's awakening is a fire.
Yeah.
With this appearance of reality.
Right.
This appearance of reality. That means everything.
Right. As it is. As what?
Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah. With this appearance of reality being the reality of appearance.
The greater.
Yeah. So that basically means, I think this way, if I was to say, this is an appearance, it's inescapable that there's a larger reality, which is that it's an appearance. So not the content of the appearance, but the fact that it's an appearance.
Right.
That's a hierarchy, you can't escape it. When people say everything is an illusion, if that is the case, then there's still a reality that's real.
Sure.
It must be a real illusion.
Yeah.
So it's inescapable. So what you're saying is you're recognizing that awakening, this process of growth, whether that's for what you find particularly meaningful in terms of specific fulfillment in areas of your life, which people do separate individual rituals for usually, like jobs and whatever and blah 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 blah, or in terms of what you find universally personally meaningful, and you can't separate the two. But that's essentially what awakening means. Awakening. Awakening itself is an analogy.
Of course.
When you wake up from a dream, what do you wake up to?
Sure. Yeah.
So it's not the case that you're just escaping a more limited appearance. You're also conjuring, because we're all magician, conjuring a larger appearance of reality every time you wake up.
Sure.
And you could think of that's the process of what waking up is. It's creative, and it's the conjuring of a larger appearance every time. A bit like what we talked about with the HGA. Now, so where was I?
So that's the first 3 lines, and then we're getting to just burn.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you want awakening, you want to participate in what you care about, and you want all of those things, all the good stuff. If you try and pursue that stuff through an appearance of reality instead of through reality itself, you're never going to get it.
Sure.
You're never going to get it. So what you recognize is if everything is appearance, there's nothing you need to manipulate. There's nothing you need to actively use as a means to an end to get what you care about. Surrendering or letting go is a version of this.
Right, okay.
Let go of these things that are just a means to an end, you'll get to the thing you want.
Right.
It's all denial of the structure of things, that it's ideal and that it's something you participate in. So this appearance of reality is actually the reality of appearance. There's nothing you can do other than just burn if awakening is a fire. It's like saying if you're in a fire and what you want is to burn, what do you need to do?
nothing. You're burning. You're in a fire. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, the interesting move that you make with that esoteric contemplation is that you move from seeing everything as practical, in other words, a means to an end, and everything you care about being absent. You move from that to recognizing that you participate in something that's already complete and whole, that's already the case, and what you're asking for is already given. And there's zero loss of result.
How is that different from you're already enlightened, you just forgot about it?
If you think you're already enlightened, you don't have to do anything about that.
Right.
You're ignoring the details, the particulars. You're saying that being a human being is irrelevant. You're saying that the details don't matter, that they're not cared for. And you see this in a practical strategy for wisdom and other stuff in renunciation, like renouncing the world. This is a misunderstanding of the nature of the world and what it means to be in it. It's one of the things I like to talk about with the Archaic Magician. We'll just come back and revisit that. You can talk about binding yourself to a problem, you're already bound to gain release from it, and you can think of that as a destruction of an image.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to awakening, it's not about escaping illusions or appearances. It's about creating bigger ones, bigger appearances.
All right. Okay.
It's about recapitulating, eventually, reality itself, the whole thing.
So is there an end to it, or is it always a continual process?
So it's a good question, because, the question is, how do you know when something is whole, when it's complete, or when it's done?
Yeah. And can you know?
Yes. Yeah. So the way that you understand it is it's when something becomes generative. That's when you know it's whole and complete. So it's why we can use analogies like parent and child, lover and beloved, maker and made, or even the pregnancy analogy, which is a good one. If you think of a parent and a child, the child is in a hierarchy. You've got the parent who's the greater and the child who's the lesser. By sharing in each other's nature, the child can grow into a parent. So the moment the child becomes a parent, it's now, you could say that's done. It's complete. Right. But just having a child is not the end of being a parent.
Yeah.
So you could argue it's just the beginning.
Yeah.
But now you're overseeing the growth of a child into a parent. So this whole process of waking up, this wisdom, or we can swap that out and say magic.
Yeah.
In other words, the creation of reality, conjuring of reality by the Archaic Magician. It reaches a point where it gets whole and complete, if you like, and because it generates another one.
Okay, right, yeah.
In the world, it generates another one. But it obviously doesn't end there. The process continues. But it can't get more whole and complete. And in the same way that a parent can't be more of a parent, they're already a parent. But now they're overseeing the growth of another child to a parent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense,
Yeah. So it's why you can hear people, non-dualists and so on, they talk about an end to awakening, but then also admit that it carries on.
Right.
They do a bit of a fudge. They can't explain why that's the case. Whereas, thankfully, we have a Western esoteric tradition that is arguably more profound than any other tradition. Again, that's controversial, but there's a way of knowing. What's the way of knowing? Do we have a way of knowing? Yeah. How can we get beyond our preferences and our opinions? You only find the idea of participation in the Western tradition. You don't find it anywhere else. And you can, personally, and people should do this, they can compare it to, say, Dogen. They can compare it to Shankara. They can compare it to, people talk about non-duality.
Yeah.
Does non-duality explain anything, or does it just say things are not two? Why are they not two? Only participation seems to explain this. It's the generative hierarchy of equal participation. What is it that wakes up? How is it possible there's something that's already the case? And yet at the same time, obviously I'm changed as a human being.
Yeah.
How do we make sense of all of this? What is sitting practice or esoteric contemplation? What is magic? What's going on with everything? What are we here for? Is there such a thing as incarnation? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. If you can make sense of things and you see it. So this is one of the reasons I've started that research project with a friend of mine. He's a doctor of neuropsychology, structure and purpose. So structure and purpose, you can think of those as systems theory words, meaning, structure is structure, how something is. Purpose means what something does. Not what you intend it to do, but what it actually does, the totality of it, what it actually does. Structure and purpose, what we're going to do with that is we're going to, principally through the website, when it comes online and people can use it and it's totally free and they get free mentoring and it's interactive, and so they don't have to bother looking at those crappy sheets on my website and try and go through the questions without any examples and whatever. They can do all that stuff, and thousands of people will use it, maybe more. We can look at all the data, what people describe. We can see whether or not, what would it mean if there was 10,000 people who all report the same structure to the psyche?
Yeah.
And now we can build other studies off the back of that. That's just the beginning. But essentially, it's a way of introducing what we can call a right opinion. So it's not whenever someone tells you something, especially in the way that I'm doing it now, the question is, do I believe them or do I doubt them? And that's all there is. Do I believe what they're saying or do I doubt it? But there's an alternative to both of those because they're actually the same thing. The alternative is certainty.
Right.
Certainty is just the description of something. Like there's no doubt or like, what's your name?
Right.
It's Tommy.
You can still lie about your name, but I know what you're saying. Yeah, the name.
But it'd be absurd to say I believe that my name is Alan, or I doubt it. It's like, what are you talking about? It makes no you're talking gobbledygook. Anyway, that alternative to believing what people say, you would have to take part in something like dialectic contemplation, and then you share it together and get to see the same thing together. And that's extraordinary and profound and wonderful. Everyone should do it. However, like one of my goals is that people have maybe a bad understanding, like the man on the street has a bad understanding of all this wisdom stuff, because that then means that we live in a different kind of a culture. So the structure and purpose is not to validate individuals' experiences, because you have the dialectic for that.
Yeah.
It's not to validate that. And so, I'm not wondering, are they deluding themselves? Am I deluding myself? Because I already have a way of knowing to see whether that's the case. And the answer is always yes.
Right.
Always deluding yourself.
Right. That's good to know. That makes it a bit easier. Yes.
Yeah. Structure and purpose is to present an irrefutable mountain of scientific evidence and lots of other studies and whatever, just to get an opinion out there, the right opinion out there. So if people are going to believe or doubt opinions, then if I said to you like, oh, it's 50 years ago this was all done, and now it's common knowledge that there's such a thing as wisdom and this is the structure of things. Like no one's debating that. It becomes invisible in the background and therefore informing the culture. That's one of the reasons I want to do structure and purpose and why it's exciting. And also, every single study I've ever come across that looks at this stuff is so badly designed and so poorly understood.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons I want to do it. The Archaic Magician. This process that we're engaged in, you can call it awakening, but it's creative. And this goes back to something I told you the first time we spoke, which is, we're given this idea that during the Axial Age, which was about 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, lasted 500 to 1,000 years, depending on who you ask, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's the time when apparently we went from being like shamanistic cultures, which is a terrible term taken from, a very small part of the globe somewhere in Russia, as a blanket term for anyone that did anything that didn't look like state-sponsored religion, whatever. But anyway, apparently we went from shamanism and human sacrifice and animal sacrifice to state-based religion, but we became concerned with things like compassion and love and wisdom and whatever, and that's the Axial Age.
And all this kind of stuff.
Yes, so you get the Buddha and whatever. Now, from that inheritance, it's a legacy problem, we have this notion that waking up and wisdom, and by the way, Heraclitus used the analogy of waking up way before the Buddha.
All right. Okay.
I'm going to introduce that into that. So it's a very old analogy. We associate it with people sat on a cushion, looking all peaceful and serene. It's much older than that. Anyway, we have this image of people waking up, look like the Buddha. These people are interested in escaping the wheel of rebirth. This is all an illusion. None of this matters. Forget the fact that your wife's just had a child. Abandon her and become a monk, which is what the Buddha did. Blah blah blah. Now, before these people, however, people who went through this process of wisdom, these were what are now unfortunately called shamans or whatever. Let's use the word magician because they were magicians. And the further back in time you go, and you certainly see this at the beginning of Hinduism with the 7 rishis, they have a very different view on this process. And the view is not everyone engages in this process. Like they're a part of it, but not everyone in their lifetime is going to wake up. That's not the aim. Yeah. We're not trying to escape anything. Rather, you have a number of individuals who go through this process to literally keep the world going. If these people weren't on the globe, a number of awakened people on the globe, literally this would all fall apart.
Okay.
And this goes back to this idea of the Archaic Magician. It's a process of creation. That's what wisdom is. It's a process of creation. Amongst other things.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. It's not about escaping. It's about creating. It's about being here and recreating what's already the case here. Yeah.
Makes sense to me. Like, the whole life is an illusion. It seems very, it seems almost cruel in a sense, because you're so dismissing so much of what we know, or of life, of humanity, of people. Like, life is all an illusion. It's so easy to go, it's fine that there's homeless and starving people and all that. It's not real anyway. I don't like the idea.
I mean, it's good that you feel that way, because the idea that everything is an illusion and therefore doesn't matter is totally wrong.
Yeah.
And again, people would say, "Oh, that's his opinion," or whatever. No, it isn't. We have a way of knowing. We have a way of knowing, and you can engage in that way of knowing. And it's our inheritance. It's in our tradition. So we should avail ourselves of it. But one way of putting it is that the appearance is a real appearance, and that it's not just random appearances. On the contrary, what's happening is the relationship between this is where we can use the lover and beloved analogy. Okay. What do lovers and beloveds do? What do lovers do when they come together?
They have sex.
They have sex and produce what?
Children.
And the children share in the nature, don't they, the lover and beloved? Yeah, and they grow up and become a lover and beloved themselves. Without even trying to articulate the meaning of having children and why you might want to do that. Like, you don't even need to do that. It's so dumb.
Yeah.
You could, but you don't even need to do that. Well, it's applicable that that's what's going on with reality.
Right, yeah.
I mean, another way of putting it is that the appearance is a real appearance. But it's an appearance that shares the characteristics of both psyche and reality. And that's the point.
And there you go. That is the conversation I had with Alan Chapman in July 2016 for the CMG AMA that has now disappeared. Sorry again for the quality, but it is what it is, and I think it's quite listenable too, so take it or leave it. Now, on to my own stuff. The podcast should be coming back and should be more regular. One of the problems I was having was that I would record something and say took me 20 minutes, and then it would take me 2.5 hours to edit it, because I was trying to take out all the blah, 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 all those kind of things, and shorten it down, because I was on the free SoundCloud, which only gives you 3 hours. So I am upgrading to the unlimited SoundCloud thing, so I can now have the podcast as long as I want. On the downside for you is you're probably going to hear more and ahs and less editing. But the whole point of doing this podcast was for me to become a better orator, better presenter, better talking, and better being at expressing myself articulately and those sort of things. So the kind of editing it and taking out all those things was kind of, in a large sense, defeating the purpose of what my intention was for this podcast, which, as I say, was to become, better at not doing those things. So I was using it as a crutch, apart from the fact that I had a limited space problem as well, which is now gone. So expect to see a lot more podcasts regularly over the next while. And again, check out the Patreon if that's something that might interest you. The 47's Grimoire of the 47's book is coming very, very soon. There will be an updated standard deck. There'll be a new limited edition deck that will go with the look and the feel and the kind of artwork of the Grimoire. And the old limited edition 47 deck, the white one, has now completely sold out, which is awesome. And yeah, the 40 Shadows, that's the new thing. So if you want to know a bit more about the 40 Shadows, check out the Patreon, TommyKelly.com, TYMMIE, or go to adventuresinwibby.com, or go to the47s.com, or find me on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter at TommyKelly.com. I'm also on Instagram, which I assume I'm Tommy Kelly on that, not sure how that works really too much. And yeah, so that's it. I will talk to you all soon, and thank you for your patience as I get all this stuff done. It'll be all worth it in the end, and it'll be a better experience for everyone. Mostly me. Okay, so bye bye now.